Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is GivReads. I'm Andrew Givler, and I give you reads. Haha. Oh, I just finger gunned. I hated that. Welcome back. My name is Andrew Givler. As I mentioned, I'm an author, YouTuber known as Sigils, and BookTuber. And here's where we talk about books, storytelling, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever I feel like, and you guys hang out. As you guys know, I am an author, but I also love to read. And so today I'm going to do my 2023 recap of my favorite books of the year, a little tier list to cover. And actually going through this, I feel like I'm missing books. Either way, it was a great year of reading, and I have a lot to talk about. But before we get into this, one thing. First of all, this is a new channel. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Okay, the YouTube stuff helps. It really, truly does. And I'd appreciate it if you guys help me grow the channel. It means a lot. Second of all, I want to just talk a little bit about like respect real quick. Writing books is really hard. I know that. I've done it. Just because a book doesn't resonate for me doesn't mean it's a bad book, doesn't mean you won't enjoy it. And also, if there's a book I really actually truly dislike or think is bad, I don't have it on this list. So everything on this list is like stuff worth checking out, but I have thoughts about them. Okay? And with that being said, let's get into the ranking. First of all, a man who needs almost no introduction in the indie writing space. We have the first book of Will White's new series, The Captain, which is a sort of sci-fi magic blend. My understanding is actually it's set in the same universe as Cradle. I believe he's confirmed that. And it is sort of it's got a progression-y feel to it. It's got like a lot of the things that Will does really, really, really well. But it's got sort of this like guy gets chosen by a sentient spaceship. He has to like recruit a crew. So you have the captain. I think the next book is out now. It's called The Engineer. He has to like recruit the different members to build it out and give the ship its ability so that they can save the galaxy. It's really imaginative, dude. Will is so good at like being off the wall and just having stuff that you're like, dude, how did you even come up with that? For me, I love Cradle. This didn't land quite as well for me. It didn't engage as hard. I think it's almost too everything for me, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, sorry, I don't know how else to explain it. Like parts of it were really, really cool, but I just had a hard time. Like it felt like all genres at a certain point, and I had a hard time like getting into the right mindset of reading it. I enjoyed it. I will probably read the rest, but it didn't hook me the same way that Cradle did from the very beginning. So I'm probably actually harshly going to give it a B. Will, I'm sorry. Again, worth reading, especially if you like Cradle. It didn't have the Cradle magic for me, which is okay. Up next is The Depth of Water by Bob McGow. This is part of the Redemption of Howard Marsh Jubal County saga. I love this series. It's basically, I think it's technically considered contemporary fantasy because urban fantasy is fantasy that takes place in a city. And this doesn't take place in a city, but it is set in our world. It's our magic, but it takes place out in like Alabama country. And it is, Howard Marsh is like a drug addict, but he needs drugs to do magic. And he just a miserable man, but he keeps having these situations where he has to rise to the occasion and get better. And that's why it's called Redemption of Howard Marsh. I love these books. I think they're so much fun to read. I think it's such a cool take on a lot of stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. For me, it's an A. It is a ton of fun. Every novel is actually like two novellas put together or two stories put together inside of it. So it was a ton of fun. I wish they were longer and had more depth, almost. Like the bite-sized like adventures, they're all so great, but I want more. Like I want that like Dresden-esque, like deep, solving a thing that has like multiple layers and multiple splitting plots. It stays a little simple while Howard does these like kind of straightforward things, but all of them are so cool. It gives me real True Detective season 1 vibes where supernatural is actually real. I highly recommend them, especially if you like urban fantasy and things like that. And the same goes for Feet in the Fire, which was the next book in the series. I read that as well. These are just great. Really enjoy them. I find them charming. I love the art style of his cover. I talked to him once on Reddit because we both had, the old Soul Fraud cover was kind of similar style. I can't say enough nice things about it. It's a ton of fun. You should check them out. Up next, I have Cold West by Clayton Snyder. Now, I believe that this book is currently actually a finalist in the SFBO thing that Mark Lawrence puts on, like sci-fi fiction. I don't remember what the body odor stands for. It's like the indie sci-fi fiction fantasy contest that he puts on with like a whole bunch of celebrity judges and stuff. I believe Cold West is currently a finalist, and I'm gonna put it right here because it deserves to be a finalist. It's great. My biggest complaint is that it's just one book. It's a standalone, but it's so well written. It's like a Wild West fantasy, but it's not a Weird West because it's not actually set in our world. It's just like a fantasy world that is a Wild West vibe, but they have 6 shooters and stuff like gunslingers. It's really cool. He is such a good how do I want to put this? I almost want to say minimalist writer, but that's like not right. But he uses like so few words. He's so economical with his words when he writes. It's really cool. It's a cold, harsh world. It feels very much like the old Westerns that just were so good. The Louis L'Amours and things like that, Hopalong Cassidy, but set in a fantasy universe. He's great at not over-explaining. His world building's phenomenal. It's a ton of fun. I want to write a Wild West thing at some point. And part of it is because of reading things like this, and it reminds me a lot of Cold as Hell, which is, of course, our friend Jamie Castle book. That's a Weird West. Highly recommend it. Speaking of Cold as Hell, there's also Vain Pursuits, which came out this year. That's book 2 of the Black Badge series. I loved this book. My buddy Jamie Castle wrote it, and Rhett, I like both those guys a lot, but it's also just a really fun Weird West. It really elevated Cold as Hell for me, because Cold as Hell, I had some flaws. I talked to Jamie about him, and he was like, just wait. And then the book came out, and I was like, oh, dude, they really elevate it. They do that good zoom out that all good world builders do, that lets you know what's going on, draw you into it, make it compelling, but it's still got that Weird West vibe. For me, it and Cold West are like really neck and neck. In some ways, I put it ahead of Cold West simply because I love big stories, I love series, and Cold West being a standalone depressed me, right? I wanted more of it, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to leave people wanting more. On the other hand, I'm gonna get more of Black Badge, so highly recommend if you're looking for the Wild West fantasy vibe. I can't say enough nice things about both of them. Okay, up next we got R.F. Kuang's Dragon Republic, which is the second book of the Poppy War. I DNF'd it, and this is like one of my few DNFs on the list. It didn't vibe with it. I enjoyed the Poppy War a little bit, but then it kind of like took a turn that I wasn't expecting. The direction it went wasn't fun for me, and I'm trying not to do spoilers, but for me, a lot of time when you have a situation that requires the hero to become a bad person in order to do what they needed to be the hero, that can work, but it didn't work in this one because for some reason I just was unsympathetic to it. And I know that like the Poppy War is super polarizing. Like I see threads on Reddit all the time. People love it and people hate it. And I don't hate it. I think that R.F. Kuang's a great writer. I just didn't vibe with the like where we were going with it, and it just became sort of a chore for me to read. But there's a reason that she sells so many books. Like she's very good at what she does. And I would read more stuff that she writes. This is the second book. I didn't read the third book, and I didn't finish the second one. The first book I liked a lot, and the second book lost me, and that's really all I have to say. And I know this might be controversial. Like I said, I know it's a hot ticket item, so I'm curious what you guys think. You can leave comments down below if you love it. Maybe tell me to finish it. Did I make a mistake? But that's what I know. Up next, we have The Dregs of Empire, which is a novella set in the Sun Eater series. Of course, that's like one of my favorite sci-fi series is going on right now. This follows like one of the characters after the events of the book, which actually we should put the book up here. It's really good. I would probably put it towards the bottom of A. I really enjoyed it. I will say I think that Christopher Rocchio is a brilliant writer, but I think that he excels at first person, and this book is written in third person because it doesn't follow the main character of the series. And this is the thing that I think is true of myself as well. I write in first person because I don't think my third person is as compelling. That's not to say that it's bad. Like, he's a great writer, but like his first person is like special and his third person is good, right? So that aside, I really enjoyed the look into it. All of the novellas really fill in holes in the story. Not holes, but like things you wish to know more about and you want to see. I've enjoyed reading all of the novellas, and I'm not usually a novella guy, so the fact that I'm rating a novella this high is actually like a compliment towards it, because again, I was criticizing Cold West for only being a standalone, and that's like one of the things I'm docking it for, because I want more. Novellas, I feel the same way. I want more. Give me more. Give me more. But it was still really good. I really enjoyed it. I recommend it. Also, since we're talking about Christopher Rocchio, I'm just gonna put Ashes of Man in S. Okay, it's incredible. It's not the best book of the Sun Eater series. I know that like everybody's talking about Sun Eater. Finally, the best book in Sun Eater is Demon in White, but Ashes of Man is great. It really put us back on a path that I'm excited about. I love the first person. I love Hadrian as a character. He's so nuanced and complex, and he's fun to ride along with in his head. And I can't say enough good things about the series. If you haven't read the Sun Eater series, the first book is Empire of Silence. Do yourself a favor. Start. Everyone I've convinced to read it has thanked me and has like convinced somebody else. So Ashes of Man continues the tradition. I can't wait. Disquiet Gods comes out in April. I will be reading it immediately, just as a heads up. Up next, some more competition for S tier. Fire and Song, book 2 of the Iron Prince, the Warformed Stormweaver series, which is Iron Prince's sequel, finally came out. Bryce, good work, dude. Bryce is a friend, obviously. Bryce is the guy who helped me recover the Soul Fraud and Dandelion Audit and all of them, get the new art. He helped me find Chris McGrath. He has done me a ton of favors, but I will roast him. He's a great writer. Warformed Stormweaver is, of course, a progression fantasy series. This continues along with it, where the main character, Raiden Ward, is getting stronger. They go to sectionals, they compete. It's a lot of fun, but it also is definitely a bit of a setup book in a good way, where he's showing us that the universe has more going on than we thought. So there's a bunch of really cool reveals that I really liked. I'm excited for book 3. It better not take 3 years, Bryce, because of book 2 really like set it up to be like, oh, you thought we were having fun? We're gonna have some real fun in book 3. So I'm super pumped about the direction of this. It's got like, you know, the magic school. It's not a magic school, but like the military training school vibe. It's got everything that you look for. It's a lot of fun. And honestly, I have a really hard time with putting these two here. I think Ash is a Man is slightly above it, although the ending of Iron Prince is so good, I want to put it above Ash is a Man. Man, I'll think about that. But they are neck and neck as S tier for me. Up next, then I read the TikTok trend of the year, Fourth Wing. Of course, the Rebecca Taros Dragon Rider romance fantasy that has blown up TikTok. I'm probably gonna put it in B. I will say that I read it quickly. I enjoyed reading it. It sucks you in, and it's hard to put down. And then there's a plot twist that's pretty freaking clever that got me pretty good. But I don't think that I'm gonna read Iron Flame, which is book 2. So do with that as you will. I enjoyed parts of it and I didn't enjoy parts of it, but I do see why it's so popular. I think it does what it's doing for a genre really well. I just don't love everything in that genre, right? Like that genre is not necessarily being written for me, which is fine. Not everything should be for me. That's how it works. But I wanted to see what all the fuss was about, and I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed it. I have recommended it to people. But for me, it didn't like knock my socks off. Up next is me finally dipping my toe into like the biggest fantasy series that I haven't done. Like me with Wheel of Time behind me, I've never read freaking Malazan. I finally read Gardens of the Moon, and I don't understand. I mean, it was good, and I immediately started the next one. It's like so big that I'm exhausted. I think I love it, but I also can't tell. Does anybody else know what I'm talking about here? Like, it really gives me Black Company vibes, which I love the Black Company. I almost felt like it was so big that there wasn't a main character I really felt like I connected with. It almost reads like you're following like 20 main characters. And for me, that was a little hard. But as I began to develop favorites, I got more and more into it. I will definitely read more Malazan. I'll put that like towards the bottom of A is what I think I would do. Up next is Iron Widow. Iron Widow sort of got overshadowed by Fourth Wing, but it was like the big TikTok, book talk, romance thing that was blowing up before then. And so I read it before I read Fourth Wing. I loved it. It's really interesting because I feel like it's pulling progression fantasy, like stuff from Fire and Song, Iron Prince, into like the sort of romance fantasy genre, right? Like the Sarah J. Maas sort of like space. And it's set in like a futuristic alternate history China where like machine aliens have invaded the world and like China's the last country standing. Men and women have to combine to basically run like giant megazords, but like it consumes them, and then this girl is like the most resistant to being consumed ever, and she can like help it level up. It was pretty cool. The next book comes out next year. I'll definitely read it. I enjoyed it a lot. There's definitely like some of like the romance tropes that like just don't work for me as well, but overall I thought like she was a really good writer. I thought that the story was really interesting, a unique thing. I enjoyed it. And if you're wanting to try something like that, I would probably recommend it over Fourth Wing, but I think you could enjoy both of them, especially if you like that genre. You should probably read both. Up next, I finally read Mort by Terry Pratchett. What a great book. I love Terry Pratchett, but I also like Terry Pratchett is like his own thing. You know what I mean? It's so hard to quantify him. For me, I think this goes in A. It's another standalone in the Discworld series. It's about the time that Death decides he needs an apprentice, and so he hires this kid from a job fair, and his name is Mort, and he starts working for Death. And it's great. It's got everything. The guy, and he almost ends up ruining the world because the intern messes some stuff up. It's great. It's Pratchett. It's hilarious. It's poignant. It's a great story too. It works on all levels because the man's a genius. I enjoyed it. Yeah. No, and I'll read more. Then we have Patrick Rothfuss's new things, The Narrow Road Between Desires. That's his like novella that came out this year. It follows Bast. It lets us see a little bit more of what Bast's day-to-day life goes. For me, you guys know that I love Name of the Wind. For me, this didn't really do much for me because I think the thing about Name of the Wind is the stakes. And this is like a really low stake cozy thing. And I didn't find myself really caring. I want to know about the king killing and, you know, about, Quoth, like, what's his deal, man? You know, and like the rich tapestry that makes the first two books so good, when it is so narrow and small and just dealing with this one character who's like making fairy deals with kids. And I found that I didn't care. Still a great writer. And if you want to know more of the universe, you can certainly get a glimpse. But Doors of Stone or bust for me at this point. Okay, next we have Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. This is hilarious to me because I only read this, like, this is the only non-fantasy book or sci-fi I read this year, and I only did because a cute girl told me to read it so we could talk about it, and I did, but I actually quite enjoyed it. It's like historical fiction. It's really well written. It's about like medieval England where this like guy who's a builder wants to build a church, and there's a whole bunch of corruption going on, and then like this like young father wants to build a church, and they team up and they like battle corruption and do all this stuff. A bunch of people get their just desserts. It's really well written, really well done. I will probably put it here. Yeah, it's good. I highly recommend it. It's an old book, but a goodie. Then we have Sebastian de Castell, an author that I really enjoy. I've read all of his other works. He has a new series out, The Malevolent Seven. It's kind of very like Ocean's 11-y vibe, like this like group of like outcasts have to team up to pull off this thing in order to not die, but it's a lot of fun. It's really irreverent. It's really sarcastic. Even in the marketing, they sort of compare it to Terry Pratchett. So I'm going to put it, you got to put somebody who's doing Pratchett style below Pratchett because Pratchett is king. But I had fun. I'll read the rest of the series. Sebastian's a great writer. The magic system was cool. The world building was cool. The world was cool. I liked everything about it. More, please, Sebastian, more. Okay, up next, this is going to be probably the hardest one to talk about. Sword of Kaigen. I know that Sword of Kaigen is, man, people love Sword of Kaigen. So I finally read it, right? People have been gushing about it. People I really respect gushed about it, and I enjoyed it. Okay, let me, before it sounds like I'm gearing up to be like, and they're all idiots. No, that's not what I'm going to say. I really enjoyed it. I thought the world was really cool. I thought the world building was cool. The writing is fantastic. I have one quibble about the choice, but I can't say it because it's a spoiler. But basically, if you've read it, the POV, the people that she chose to show POVs of was really disconcerting to me because of what happens and how it goes, and that should tell you, and maybe that's just me, but that really threw me. The thing that really bummed me about this and like makes me less excited about it is after I finished it, I went to be like, okay, well now I want to know more, because it doesn't solve any of the problems, right? It's a single event in what's supposed to be a bigger thing, and the author has said that she doesn't feel like she's up to the task of handling the universe right now. She's taken down some of the other books that were actually like a part of the universe, and she will come back to it someday, but she's not actively working on it. So we don't really get any resolution, and that's a bummer. It was like, man, if it launched into a series, I would read the rest of the series, but on its own, I wish I knew that before I started reading. You know what I mean? So for me, I'll probably put it there. Yeah, it probably would have been an A otherwise, but I think it gets knocked down to B just because, like, I felt sad. When she writes the rest, I'll bump it. I will absolutely show up. Like, it's worth a read, especially if you like samurai, sword fight, magic combos, like, some good anime fighting type stuff. The action is cool. The world building's dope. I want more. She pulled me in so deep and then didn't have anything else for me, and that's made me sad. Up next, we have the final book of Cradle, Waybound. I really enjoyed it. I think my biggest complaint is it felt like there could be another book. It felt like the ending wasn't an ending in some ways. And maybe there will be another book, and that's just Will having fun. But it sort of felt like they went from, hey, we solved this one problem to the end. And I felt like we could have one more book, but like that's just me. Otherwise, I enjoyed all of it. The final fight was satisfying. The resolution was satisfying. It came together. It paid off. I'm glad I read the series. Would read it again. It's got magic. It does. But I think that like Dreadgod and Reaper were better than Waybound a little bit. But sometimes that's how finales are, right? It's like the final arc before the finale. Those are like the moments that you're like, ooh, and then like the guy wins, and you're like, oh, we won, okay. So I think it's really hard to do anything other than that. It's S tier for me. I still recommend the series highly. It's probably the best finished progression fantasy that's out there. I think Iron Prince can give it a run for its money when it's done, but it's done. So you get bonus points for that. Okay, up next we've got The Will of the Many, James Islington's new book. This for me was incredible. I had not read any of his stuff before. I loved this book. It's got real like Red Rising vibes to it in a great way. Not in a copy way, but just in a like, if you like that, you will like this kind of thing. The world is super, super creative. I love how it works. It pulls on a bunch of stuff that I'm just a big fan of, like Roman history, classical stuff, things like that. Feels really, really well connected. It's written in first person, and it's really, really engaging first person. It worked for me on every level. I was thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. I cannot wait for the next one. It's great. If you haven't read The Will of Many, I think it is like tied for my book of the year, 100%. Now, then what happened is I had not read any James Islington before. I've seen the beautiful white covers for his, I forget the series is called, The Shadow of What Was Lost, Echo of Things That Come in a Light That Falls. And I've always seen them. I thought they looked gorgeous. And then I was like, oh, dude, that's written by the guy who I'm now like gushing over his book. Let's go do it. And a couple of you commented on the video and were like, hey, man, just so you know, it's different. And so this is his first series, and I know all about first things. Like, Soul Fraud is the worst book I've ever written, right? Like, I think Dandelion Audit and Star Summit are way better. To me, these books didn't hit the same thing that made Will of the Many great. For one, they're written in third person, and again, I'm preaching to the choir here because this is me as well. I'm a first-person author. I will maybe try a third-person thing someday, but man, it is a completely different writing style, and it just maybe not connect with the characters as much as I did with the main character in The Will of the Many. That sort of disconnected me. There's a lot of time travel stuff going on, which is cool, but the personal element didn't land for me, and that really detached me from it. So I think that I kind of end up putting them all kind of like here-ish. Upper B, they're still fun, especially if you like time travel. Like, if you like Wheel of Time and you like time travel and Malazan, you probably enjoy them. But Will of the Many is like a complete departure from that style, and like such an improvement, I felt like man, I am such a huge fan of him after reading The Will of the Many, but the Shadow of What Was Lost and all that just didn't quite land for me the same way, but I'm glad I read them. And then last but not least at all is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, the second to last book of Red Rising. For me, this is book of the year, but it's really close with Will of the Many. It's incredible. It's beautiful. Pierce Brown is such a good writer, dude, and it's like upsetting to read as an author because he just makes things work that just hurt my heart because I don't know if I can do that. You know what I mean? He's so good. I love the direction Red Rising has gone. Like, just like the question that it's positing. Like, if you know, the first 3 books are like, can Red rise up to break the system? And then once the system is broken, can they actually build something better? What does it mean for a breaker to become a builder? That is such a good question, dude. And I love it for it. And Lightbringer is really much like there's the part of the hero's journey, right, where he goes through the darkness. He gets beaten up, he fails, he runs into a wall, and Lightbringer is Darrow coming out of that, and everyone else coming out of that to some degree, and like finding themselves, Severo and everything, and it's done so well, man. He just like, you can tell that he knows these characters like the back of his hand. He lives and breathes them, and it's just a masterclass of writing, and I love it. I can't recommend it enough. I really can't. Book of the year, with Will of the Many being right behind it. And then Ashes of Man also, like, I would say the first 4 of my S tier are all incredibly close. Waybound is then like just right behind them, like very comfortably in S tier. And then A tier and B tier are also all very close together. I totally forgot to put this in, but James J. Butcher's Long Past Dues came out, and I also really enjoyed this. If you guys don't know, James J. Butcher is of course the son of Jim Butcher, Dresden Files. I have him right there. He also has covers done by Chris McGrath. I freaking love them, dude. They're gorgeous. Boom, right there. This is the second book in his urban fantasy series, which I really, really liked the first one, Dead Man's Hand. To me, he expanded the world in this one, showed us a little bit more of what was going on. I enjoyed it. It does feel like his main character needs to find his footing a little bit, and I want to see that happen because he's still a little too helpless for me, but he's a lot of fun. His sidekick is also great. The Huntsman, I love how that's all coming together. I'm excited to read more. I think it's really going to turn into something special. So this one was like A tier for me, but upper A tier for sure. Really, really, really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the rest. Okay, guys, but I think that's my list. Like I said, I think I might be missing a few that I read, or there are some I left off because I didn't like, but I want to read more this year. I want the list to be bigger next year. Give me some recommendations of things I'm missing down in the comments below. Let me know if you disagree with any of my ratings, and don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on your way out. We'll talk soon.